Welcome to Chai with Manju, with your host, Dr. Manju Sheth.
Welcome to special edition of Chai with Manju called Making History. Our guest today is Judge Neil Sherring. Appointed by Governor Baker, he was sworn in on June 13, 2018, making history as the first Indian American to be appointed as judge in Massachusetts Housing Code in Commonwealth. Truly a proud moment for all of us. He's continued to make extraordinary contributions. Let's meet him. So, Judge Sherring, welcome to our show. It's truly a privilege for us to have you with us today.
Well, the privilege is mine as well. I am really thrilled to be part of a program that you have pioneered that provides such a wonderful contribution to our community. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, as I said in my introduction, you made history, but we need to start your journey right from the beginning. So, your dad, Professor Albert from Delhi, and mom, Shanta Sherring from Hyderabad, came to Boston in 1958, and you were born and raised here. So, what were those early years like that shaped you to be the person you are today?
Good question. Being born and raised in Boston, I think, is kind of a unique thing. My generation's kids are in that category, but most of my contemporaries came to this country at a later time. So being born and raised in Boston has a unique provides me with a unique perspective, both as a as a parent and as well as a lawyer and as a judge, because I do think it's important to have an understanding of the city and the communities that you serve. In terms of what it was like, we had a one-bedroom apartment right in Kenmore Square. Dad was at Boston University, and mom was doing a residency at Beth Israel. Mm-hmm. And so it was my sister and I in one bed, and my parents in the other bed. And our view was the Citgo sign that you can see from Kenmore Square.
Yes.
Park. So that's my memory growing up. We were very happy. It was a very close and cozy apartment with international students that lived there. So we were exposed to people from all over the world. And I think that it was a really good beginning for me in terms of my journey in the city of Boston. And in that journey, there were quite a few challenges, and we had a fire in that apartment. Mm-hmm. And in the middle of the night, there was a loud bang on the door. We're woken up. I couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old, and a Boston fireman came to the door, and he said, "You got to get out." And it was in the middle of winter, just like it is now, and freezing cold. I had a blanket and slippers, and I had my pajamas, and my sister and I, my parents, were out on the sidewalk watching this apartment building burn from the top. And it was we were homeless, and they came from India, and they had absolutely limited resources as students and new to this country. And there weren't many Indians at that time. Boston,
right. Handful of Indians, right?
That's right. They must have been maybe a dozen Indians in Boston. So it was a challenge for them on a number of levels, but it gave me an early appreciation of being stripped of a sense of comfort and a sense of security, and also being out, literally homeless. But we overcame, and strong parents, strong community, and good friends gets you through a lot.
Right. So you did your undergrad in physics, and then you switched to law. You've had an incredible career in law, of course, leading up to becoming a judge. What are some of the most satisfying moments that you've had in your legal career?
Well, there's so many, and I kind of look at that question as an opportunity to take a look at each part of my career and what was satisfying about it. So I started out as a law clerk for the judges of the Massachusetts Superior Court. And mind you, I was the first lawyer in the family, and there weren't many South Asian lawyers in our community. So having the ability to talk to someone was limited. And so I started out working for judges in the Superior Court, and I had an opportunity to work on some very visible and high level cases, both in terms of murder cases as well as complex business cases. And from that, I learned I wanted to be a trial lawyer. I wanted to go in front of a jury, and I wanted to do what you see on TV sometimes.
Yes.
And it's not like that. But
I'm going to ask you that.
But that's what I wanted to do. And so after that, when you have no trial experience as a young lawyer, how do you get it? One of the best ways of getting that trial experience is either as a prosecutor or as a criminal defense lawyer, because those cases tend to go to trial, and they tend to go to trial quite often. And so I took a job as an assistant district attorney or a criminal prosecutor. And I prosecuted many cases, and very satisfying to be able to advocate on behalf of victims of crime, whether it was domestic violence, rape, murder. These types of cases opened my eyes to the struggles that the victims and the families of victims go through. It opened my eyes to a society within our society that we don't often come across. Many of the people that are in the justice system are sometimes often a bit marginalized in society. So it was quite a learning experience, and I also learned about public service and doing public service. And so that was and then transitioning from public service into the private practice. Before I did that, I worked for the Attorney General of Massachusetts. I was an assistant attorney general, and that was my last public service as a lawyer. And I was doing more of the civil side. So it was a good preparation to go into private practice. And then I went to a big firm called Mintz-Levin downtown. And while at Mintz-Levin, one of the most memorable cases over there was a pro bono case I handled, where I was tasked to seek to get political asylum from a gentleman from Somalia. And this was in the early 2000s. So it was a different climate politically. It was a different climate socially. But I was really challenged, and I had a trial in front of an immigration judge against the government. So this was the first time I was on the other side of the V, and I was able to get asylum for this gentleman. And I learned about the horrific and tragic circumstances of this gentleman that he went through in Somalia to come to this country to seek asylum. So that was a memorable case. And then after being in the downtown firm of Mintz-Levin, my childhood friend, next door neighbor that I grew up with, who I stayed friends with since we were in middle school together, approached me. And when we were kids growing up, we would talk about maybe opening a business up together. And his parents immigrated from Greece and mine from India. So we had a very common connection. We lived on a street with only 5 houses in Newton. And so we had a chance to fulfill that dream. And we opened up a firm here in Westwood, Mass. And it was a great journey. 18 years, I fulfilled another dream of mine, and that was to become a judge.
And I was very impressed to see it's quite a complicated 7-step process, right?
Well, I think you are familiar with this phrase, if you see a turtle on top of a fence, you know he didn't get there on his own. So yes, it's a very exhaustive,
Mhm.
stressful, demanding process, and it should be.
Mhm.
I think it should be
Right.
because it is an appointment that has tremendous responsibility, and so it is a process that really puts your whole life, not just your career as a lawyer, not just the lawyers that you had cases against that you might have had disagreements with, not just judges, but your community, your family, your involvement in your community. It defines your life when you apply for a judgeship. And it also requires a tremendous amount of support from the people that you have come to know, not just your family, which I got a tremendous amount of support from my family. My wife, Yashika, I couldn't have done it without her. I really couldn't. She was truly a rock, and she still is. But to have to put up with all that I was to do during that application process was amazing. My two boys, Vijay and Karan, inspire me every day. And it didn't just stop there. You know, it was also my extended family. My wife's parents, BD Nayak and Leela Nayak, like my own parents. You know, if my parents were here,
they would be so proud of you. So proud of you.
I was just missing them, and having my wife's parents by my side, I'm very fortunate, very blessed.
Yes.
And I also have my sister and my brother-in-law. My sister's Dr. Asha Sherring, and my brother-in-law is Shirish Dandekar, and also my sister-in-law, Tanya Nayak, and her husband Brian O'Donnell. And I know you know Tanya. Just a very blessed and extremely fortunate position to be in. So I feel very blessed. I would be remiss if I didn't also mention that it wasn't just my family, it wasn't just the lawyers that I worked with over the years, and my former partner, Lou Dakoyanis, but also within our community. So many people really stepped up. But really at the top of that is Sushil Tuli. He, from the time I met him, he served as not just a mentor and a role model, but a friend, like a brother. And I refer to him as my older brother because he truly is that person. And it's not just for me. He's like that with so many people in our community. But I have to often pause and just be so mindful of the support that he provided to me.
I can't let you finish this without asking you, how did you meet your beautiful wife?
Well, if you were here, she probably would add to the story, and I would. It's a really unique situation because you've got myself, born and raised here in Boston. You know, our community growing, our circle of friends, as you know, is extremely tight knit. And so when I came back to the Boston area, I was working in the western part of the state at the district attorney's office, as I mentioned. So when I came back, my dad went to Yoshika's graduation when she was getting her MBA, and he took it upon himself to mention to her that, look, my son is back in the Boston area, and he's involved in this NETSAP, which is the network
South
Asian professionals. Thank you. And so I didn't know he did that. And so she called me up and she said, yeah, your dad mentioned you're involved in NETSAP. And we were trying to get the Boston chapter together. So she joined in with the group that we were working on. And we remained friends for the longest time. And so when we became a little more than friends, we had to be mindful of the fact that our community is very tight knit. And so, we wanted to go at our pace. And so eventually, once we disclosed our relationship as boyfriend and girlfriend, mind you, that's it.
Yeah.
And I remember we went to a party once, and one of the Uncle G's was there, and he looked at me and said, "Congratulations! I heard the good news." And we were looking at each other with the good news that we were dating. But it was nice. And so I guess the relationship that my parents had with Yoshika's parents as friends and part of this community, and the fact that my dad reached out in some ways could argue an arranged marriage, but it was really sort of like a dream come true for me to meet Yoshika and to
beautiful boys now,
and to have a family and to be part of a wonderful family.
So you mentioned NETSAP, and you have been part of so many organizations, Political Forum, UIA, NETSAP, like you said, SABA, even Know Your Rights with IACNE, and also you are the co-founder of South Asian Domestic Violence Task Force. How do you balance out everything, like contributing and giving back so much?
I find that question interesting coming from you, who practices medicine as a physician so much in the community, but not just with Chai with Manju, but the many other efforts that you put forward to recognize folks in our community, to empower women, and so I think it's a lot of what you do, Manju. It's keeping busy, but also keeping mindful that there are things that we do that connect us within our community, and I really try and instill that on our boys, that as you are part of a community, there's so much that you can do, and we're blessed. Many of us are blessed, right? We're blessed in our careers, we're blessed in our family support, we're blessed in a lot of ways, and I think it's very, very important, and it was instilled upon me by my parents, and particularly my dad, who really had a unique perspective because he was a sociologist, and so he had a love of people, a love of community, and he instilled that upon me. And he took part in a lot of things in the community while my mom was busy, like you, seeing patients. But my dad really emphasized that, and it really helped me both. I think with a great feeling of satisfaction, but also with a development of a part of my life that I think is really important. I always like to do public service. It's hard to find the time, but it's important to do.
Right. So I have to ask you this question, as somebody who's watched all the legal shows, starting with LA Law, Judge Judy, now Suits with My Daughter. Is it fact or fiction? Because I've never been in a courthouse, and I'd rather not be there because I know which side I'll be on. So is there any reality to these legal shows or that we watch on TV?
Great question. There's a component of reality to it. Absolutely. So when a good example is when you see a trial take place in a courtroom, it's entertaining. It's entertaining when you do it. I love doing courtroom work. I love being a trial attorney. I loved being a trial attorney. And when you see a trial take place, what you don't see is the hundreds of hours of preparation. And a lot of hard work that goes into that, but it's also tedious. It also involves a lot of research, a lot of writing. And so that part of it you don't see, just like a great production that you put on with Chai with Manju. It doesn't, you don't always see what all the hours of prep that go into it. And I think the same thing is evident in a jury trial when you watch it on.
No. So my next question for you, which is, I'm hoping you will say yes. Do you have any political ambitions?
Uh, uh, it's a good question. And as a judge, it's important to keep in mind that we are separate from the other branches of government. And so the think of it this way, so the legislative branch enacts the laws, right? And it's important for the legislators to focus in on that and to focus in on how do I write a law that is clear, that understands all of the issues that this proposed law is going to affect both people and society. And then you have the executive branch that then enforces that law, right? And so typically the district attorney would be an example of an enforcement of the law. And then you have the judiciary, which must remain separate from those two branches in order to fairly, objectively apply the law and or interpret the law. So it is it's a natural benefit for a judge to be able to understand the political process and to be an effective politician. But it's a role that is completely different and is right now my focus is and has to be on being the best judge that I can be. And that's really what's going to help, I think, the communities that I serve.
Right. Now, for the young people, especially who are watching our show and are thinking about a legal career, what would be your advice to them?
Dare to dream and do it. You can absolutely excel in this profession. It wasn't like that for me when I first started out. This was in like the early 90s. There weren't many lawyers that were South Asian. There weren't many lawyers that were women. There weren't many lawyers of color. And so the process was a little bit more difficult. And as one of the quotes that my dad used to share with me is that, when you're a minority, all eyes are on you, right? And so if you do well, that gets recognized, it gets noticed. If you do poorly, it also gets recognized and it gets noticed. And so it was a very difficult time, I think, for many. But today, there are so many leaders within our legal community that are South Asian and people of color, that are women, and there's so many examples that we're seeing in the news and in history. Within Boston, there is the SABA organization, South Asian Bar Association, which is tremendous. I have the privilege of being on the board of advisors for SABA, but when I first started, our SABA was 10 South Asian lawyers. We didn't have email. We didn't have cell phones. It was just making phone calls and saying, well, let's all get together and meet at a restaurant and get together and talk. And from there, it kind of grew into a list. And from that list, it grew into, regular meetings. And I am just so proud and so thrilled to see that today, the leadership of SABA is absolutely exemplary and provides such a great example for other bar associations across the country. And so, yes, if you are a young person in college and you're thinking of law school, you've got to take the LSAT and you've got to do the best you can academically. But also, I think it's important to understand what it's like to practice law. It's an incredible profession where you can change the world in so many ways. You truly can. So use your vision, use your hope, use your optimism, use your enthusiasm, and you can really be that type of lawyer that changes the world, like Mahatma Gandhi.
Right. That is amazing. So on that note, thank you for your such inspiring words. And you are a true role model for so many of us. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And I have to tell you, as a community, we are very, very proud of you. So thank you.
That means a lot. And thank you
Thank
for
you.
this opportunity and all the work that you do. Much
Thank
appreciated.
you. Thanks.